Did you have a period of partying hard, raving, promiscuity, etc., and when and why did you put an end to it? Just got sick of being constantly sick and tired. The hangovers and repercussions of the hard partying started to outweigh the fun that I was having in the first place. The whole lifestyle was consuming far too much of my life, and I decided I would benefit greatly from trying to get my crap together. Some people also call that growing up. I'm sick and tired of always being sick and tired. Yes, a lot of drinking and a lot of drugs a few times a week. I had my own rule that I wouldn't go to class or work hungover or high inebriated. Once I moved away for college and had to work more to support myself, I found less and less time to party without it interfering with class or work. I greatly enjoyed the party lifestyle, but I honestly didn't miss it. Just felt natural to choose adult responsibilities over partying. Of course, it was a gradual change, so that probably helped. I had my own rule that I wouldn't go to class or work hungover or high inebriated. Setting that rule makes partying time shrink fast when you're working a 9-5 and going to school at night. I tell you what. From 16 to around 22-23, it got old at some point, and I realized that the people I was partying with probably weren't going to become mature adults. In most of their cases I was right. Yes. From 1925 I was a big partier. Then one Halloween I went to the annual bash my group of friends put on. I was dressed like a Catholic schoolgirl. My boyfriend of 3 years was dressed like a struggling musician. Well, he was a struggling musician. We got drunk and had a lot of fun. Our daughter was born 9 months later. We married when she was a few months old. Had another daughter 3 years later and turned into people that go to bed at 10:30 and make bad puns. The traditional end to partying. 2024. After a while it got old, and when the smoke finally cleared I realized the friends who didn't party like me actually got pretty far in their life. I'm 30 now, and still kicking myself to catch up. Life is not a race and you are not behind. Do not compare the progress of others to yours because you are not traveling on the same path. I was pretty promiscuous from ages 24 to 26. Not, like, hundreds of different men promiscuous, but frequent sex after the first date and multiple friends with benefits promiscuous. I did it because beforehand, I was really conservative about sex and felt like I was lacking life experience. I stopped because quality is better than quantity, and because sex without connection is more hollow for me than what you get when you know your partner. From age 29 to 33, I was raised when there was a big thing and I took it really seriously, so I made a conscious decision to avoid drugs during the time when most of my friends were experimenting with them. Then when I turned 21 I started drinking and for a long while was able to keep it under control. Sure, I drank every day but always the same amount and never enough to black out or anything. Then I started working at a high pressure sales office and I meet someone who offered to take me to cash our paychecks at a local casino. I went and he brought up the idea of going to a local bar afterward. I had nothing better to do so I figured why not, and I went. After a few hours and lots of drinks, he told me he wanted me to go to his car so we could talk. I said yes, and when I got out there he had a small bag of white powder. I asked him what it was, knowing more than likely already, and he said it was C and he wanted me to try a line. Whether I was drunk and curious or I just didn't care anymore I don't know, but I did it. And it was amazing. It solved a problem I didn't know I had. We were there all night and most of the next day, and when I finally went home I knew that I wanted to feel like that every second of my life from that moment on. I started partying every weekend and soon after several days a week. Eventually getting high became my raison d'etre and I was loving life. Then I started missing work and eventually lost my job entirely. But I kept going because I wasn't going to let a little thing like being broke stop me. But after a few months I ran out of people to mooch off and I ended up homeless. That was what finally got me to put the straw down. I'm coming up on 8 months sober now and I'm off the streets, but I know I can never go back to that life. Which is sad, but the cost is too high. It solved a problem I didn't know I had. I work in addictions, and that is the realest statement I've read in a long time. Most people replying seem to be young. I'm old by Reddit standards. I've had my partying time the last 4 years. I'm in my mid-40s. I didn't really party that much in high school and college. I didn't sleep around that much as a young man. I was married 16 years. When I got divorced, I started dating and drinking more. It was a perfect time. I own 2 solid businesses, no kids, financially secure. So what if I'm old and bald? I don't know if this was a midlife crisis or me just taking control and wanting to sow my wild oats. I've been essentially a mess the last few years. I've had more women in their 20s than I did when I was in my 20s. I used to ask my wife for threesomes. She wasn't having that. First birthday after my divorce, my young GF arranged a foursome with 2 of her other girlfriends and me. I was living in promiscuity and alcohol and it was glorious. Because I own my businesses, I have lots of flexibility. I could stay out drinking every night and then roll into work at noon. Last year there was a time when I realized I was spending way too much on alcohol. When you go out 3-5 nights a week and are spending about $100 a night, it might be time to slow it down. So what changed this? A woman. My last girlfriend was told the whole time that I was not her boyfriend and we are not in a committed relationship. However, about 6 months ago, I became involved with a woman I've known for more than a decade. She's wonderful, caring and kind. She also has an 11-year-old daughter. Since becoming involved, I've declared I'm in a committed relationship. Also, a kid around tends to change things. Last night, rather than go out drinking and slutting like I would have been doing a year ago, I took my girlfriend, her daughter and a daughter's friend to go see Pan. But you know what? I'm cool with this. I've had more than my fair share of debauchery and shenanigans over the last few years. I'm happy to be back in a relationship that I hope will end in marriage. So really, it's the right woman that has gotten me back on track from a ridiculous but fun midlife crisis partying lifestyle. $100 a night. You must live in the Midwest or far from any city. I wish I could consider that budget. 1626 I started with X and kept going. Moved lots of times so I could keep getting high. Eventually ended up on M for CPL years. I got sick of being treated like crap and having everything I owned destroyed or stolen. Finally moved away but then started drinking heavily. Did that for CPL years with a guy I thought I was with. Turns out we were just drinking frick buddies and he ended up knocking up some other chick. Decided to go to school for 2 years and got my degree but I was still drinking pretty heavily. After school I got in a relationship with a longtime friend. Actually my ex's best friend. We moved in together but I wasn't working, but still drinking. It got to the point where money was super tight and he was stressed and resentful because he had to take care of everything. About 2 years ago I finally got my crap together and got a job. I didn't want to lose him and I was sick of feeling worthless. Things got much easier for both of us, mentally and financially. I now have another job working 40 hours a week. I'm a manager at my new job and still work part-time at my first job. Just bought a car and we are starting to put away savings. I'm glad for my past because it made me who I am today, but 0/10 would not recommend. For me it was when things started to get difficult. About 26ish. I drank and partied from high school through blue-collar jobs and through college, then through a master's and into a better job. It was easy. I didn't have to try very hard. And one Sunday night about 8:30 it suddenly hit me that I needed to not have another beer that night because I needed to be sharp at about 6 AM the next morning. And I had that moment where I realized that my job was pretty dang challenging and that I needed to be focused to get any better at it. But then I thought about all the hobbies I had accumulated, how I wasn't overweight yet, and all the sex I wanted to have. I realized that a few beers never got in the way, but 10 would. I probably needed to chill the frick out if I was going to keep doing well at anything. Where the frick were you all partying at 16? When I was 16 I mostly stayed inside and played games. Depends on where you live, but when I was 16 we would have bush parties, hang out in parks, or go to someone's house where there was either no parents or the parents didn't care about drinking. Then again it might be different from your country. Where I am drinking age is 18/19 so people start drinking earlier. I started going to bars and clubs at 17 and that was later than some of my friends. From about 1824, I grew up in a pretty strict home, and as soon as I moved out, I found that wonderful world and stayed in it throughout college. It's just less fun when you have a full-time career and want to spend your weekends actually doing something that's not bellying up to a bar or trying any drug that's put in front of you. Mine only lasted a couple of years. It ended when I was 18 and my father, a cop in the same town I lived in, arrested me for underage consumption. It was a good thing. It helped straighten me out. Officer Buzzkill over here. There was a point in college where I could drink a fifth of Smirnoff vodka while pre-gaming with friends and then go out. This happened like every weekend for 8 months when I was 21-22. I was a small 120-pound girl and could drink anyone under the table. But I was so fit and healthy otherwise that I never had any repercussions besides stereotypical hangovers. Not so much anything wild, by just the amount I could consume is shocking to me when I look back on it. My 2 best girlfriends and I would also sometimes play a game called Finish the Handle, where we had to finish the handle of vodka together before we left to go out. I also remember in the middle of this streak I went to Northwestern University's Dillo Days to party with my best friend who attended school there, and her friends thought I was insane the amount I consumed that Saturday and was still standing and functioning. I had like 3 mimosas and a Bloody Mary to start the day, cleaned off a fifth of Smirnoff by 3 PM and helped win a case race by 6. Then just drank whatever else I could find lying around in people's fridges that no one seemed to care about or claim when I asked if I could have it. Ugh. In my mid-20s I started experimenting with drugs. I'd never been a big drinker or smoker. They both mellowed me out and half the time just made me want to sleep and be lazy. Then I discovered C and ecstasy. I'd always stayed away from anything harder than a blunt, because I was focused on college and the following career. Well, I gave everything to studying, and the career wasn't there. Graduated right at the economic crash. So I adjusted. I found a career that was interesting and incredible, but not what I had wanted. I worked hard, saved up a few $1,000s, and sold almost everything I had and bought a one-way ticket to Europe. I lived on next to nothing, but as I made my way from city to city, I'd occasionally find work, and I met a girl who was snorting coke like it was the fountain of youth in powder form. I tried it, and my life changed. It was beautiful. My body felt orgasmic, and I felt more extroverted and alive than I had ever felt before. The hangover was non-existent, and my focus shifted from self-revelation and cultural exploration to reliving that high. In the same time frame, we tried ecstasy, well, MDMA first, and I'd found a drug that could give you hours of pure limitless happiness and pleasure. Jesus, the drug is incredible. The first time was like nothing I've ever experienced. I'd never been that happy in my life. So, between coke and MDMA ecstasy, I was getting high almost every night. We'd drink, go try to score, then get high until we ran out. There's nothing more depressing than the moment you realize the high is fading and you don't have any more stuff. This went on for close to 2 months. It became a ritual, and after a while I didn't appreciate anything in life. The truth is, drugs are incredible on a level that normal life can't compete with. The feelings you get while you're high are so intense and enjoyable that you're left looking at the remaining hours in the day with a sense of apathy. Nothing can compete, and eventually I just got tired of not being able to enjoy anything when I wasn't high. I wanted to look at a beautiful landscape and feel the way I used to feel. I wanted to eat a nice meal and appreciate every flavor. I wanted to be excited by life again, even if it was mundane in comparison. They don't teach you that in school. They don't explain the intense pleasure and happiness that drugs can bring you. It's not that drugs are bad, it's that they're so good that life itself becomes bad in comparison. And that's a very, very dangerous thing. It lasted all of one day. The first time I got drunk, it set off my chronic gut condition. Apparently enjoying alcohol isn't an option for me. 1820 living in Germany. When I wasn't working I was traveling and partying. It stopped when I moved back to the States. 1722. The partying drinking got more frequent over those years where we were going out multiple times a week for Wing Wednesday, Thirsty Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Our friend circle got bigger and bigger and bigger where the average party was pushing 30-50 people. Then people starting bringing their friends. who brought their friends, and it started to get messy. People stealing things, fights, someone puked in a wash machine, strangers having sex on the deck. Then it just got old. When it got too big and too many random people partying, it started to lose the appeal, and cleaning up the next day was heck. People always said they would help, but of course no one did. Our friends all took turn hosting the parties, so it wasn't always at my house. We even had a cab driver that would hear the same few addresses calling for a ride around midnight, and he would come and be our cab driver, and we all thought this was great. We had our own driver, when in reality he was a total creep preying on drunk young women. I would say it peaked around 2022, and the last year was when the rose-colored glasses came off and you started to see how screwed up it was. The amount of booze we individually drank before we went out, pre-drinking, was disgusting. Easily 2-3 bottles of wine for one person. Or girls were drinking 3/4 of a 750ml spiced rum alone. Of course lots of shots in there too. Same old pre-drinking. Leaving the party at midnight already drunk to go to the bar. Leave the bar at 3. Eat fast food. Go to an after party. Go home at 5-6. Drinking brings a lot of drama. Every night we went out something happened of some sort. It just truly got old. I finished high school and was going to university during this time, so by 22 I just had to slow down. And 80% of our friend group did the same. Our huge friend group dropped 50% when the frequent parties stopped. Then our group just grew up, got long-term spouses, adult jobs, bought houses, engaged, marriage, babies, the whole bit. Now I would say there are probably 3 girls left from our original group that are almost 30 and are still living the same way we used to. We are still friends, but in the sense we text once in a while and once a year plan a girls' night. Watching almost 30-year-old women behave this way is sad. Nothing wrong with going out once in a while, but there is more to life. I am still in my party phase. When I was 16-20 I played in a punk rock band. Typical drinking and smoking weed. When I was 18 some friends convinced me to go to a rave with them. I took my first roll, a blow dolphin, and loved it. I threw myself into that culture. I'd hit up every underground rave in my city and frequently take road trips to raves out of town. I was 20 when I took acid for the first time. I took about 3.5 hits of family fluff and lost my mind at a small citrons festival. I fell in love with psychedelics. After that festival I started going to larger events like Wakarosa, Underground Sound, Harvest Festival. If anyone is familiar with the legendary Schwag stock parties at Camp Zoe, we've probably met. Happy Schwag. This is where I became familiar with almost everything. LSD, shrooms, DMT, MXE, ketamine, MDMA, MDA, hash oil, C, you name it. I just turned 28 and I have still been seeking out raves and festivals, and I make a good effort to see local music a couple times a week. During that time I also earned a college degree and met the love of my life. Somewhere around 24-25 I learned how to really make it work. I learned I didn't need to be out of my mind for every event. I developed a healthy respect for substances, and when I did decide to go all out I would make sure to space those experiences out by a month or more. Now my girlfriend and I are saving money to go into food vending so we can party for a living. No signs of stopping. You live the dream. I partied hard from 17-26. A big reason was because I bartended through college and grad school. It really didn't matter if I showed up hungover to work. Most of my friends worked in food and beverage industry, so they had a similar lifestyle, so it didn't seem weird to be partying hard all the time. I finished my masters and became a teacher. I wanted to be a good role model for my students. I take my job very seriously and I would never show up hungover to work now. Also I have some teacher friends now, and while on a Friday we go to dinner and have a couple glasses of wine, I no longer stay up all night drinking and doing drugs. I am still friends with a lot of my bartender buddies, but it's understood that I will only attempt to rage in all my former glory if it is your birthday. Otherwise I'll be leaving the bar promptly at 10 to go to bed. Mood swings. From 99 to early 01 I was raving almost every weekend and heading to the club nights a few times during the week. Ecstasy was the drug of choice. Firstly, I was in university and my grades tanked for a bit, Secondly, I'd get more depressed than I was previously used to, and that was a warning sign I listened to. Stopped taking ecstasy and kept going out, but it wasn't really fun anymore, so I slowly hung up the huge raver pants and made it a thing of the past. Started late, in my 30s, got addicted to crack, dealt coke, lived next to a bar. I did shitloads of dope, smoking, shooting, was high and drunk every day. I put myself into situations where I could easily have been raped, murdered, seen some crazy crap. Stopped because I just couldn't go on like that. 10 years later, I was able to do that because I lived with the dude whose house we dealt out of. I procured and weighed, while he would distribute. I just had to be sure there was enough money left for the next day's re-up. I also got all the overage after the sack was weighed out. Crack dealers would give me freebies for using our scale, and sometimes they would want me to test their batches. So it was everywhere, and easily accessible. I was still alive, despite my best efforts, and I knew I had to stop, otherwise I'd have absolutely no future. Now I am back working, doing the things I did before drugs, making good money, with a chunk of change in the bank. It had been so many years that I never thought I'd get back what I lost. So grateful to be out of that lifestyle. I am 48 now, and it took me about 4 years from cleanup to present. It's tough, but so worth it. D. Holy crap, there's some cautionary tales in here. I was a shy introvert up to my mid-20s, brainwashed by dare, and afraid of displeasing authority figures. Then at 27, after breaking up with the only boyfriend I'd ever had and following that up with 3 years of celibate hermit artist lifestyle, something in me just snapped. I got on OkCupid and got on Craigslist. I fricked men, women, men and women together. I went to an all-women sex party. I fricked strangers in cars and public parks. I personally had no drug hookups except weed, but I realized men off OKC would happily share their drugs with me. I tried acid, MDMA, opiates, coke, amphetamines. Around 30, I started to get weary of doing all this with strangers, and pining for better connection with other people. After a few failed starts at a relationship, I went on a date with someone expecting just a hookup. We did MDA together on that first date. We're still together 2.5 years later. We have a crew of friends who all started partying in mid-late 20s or later. All have life goals, careers, very intelligent, very functional. We like to go out to a bar a couple nights a week and have a few drinks, or have a couple lines hanging out at someone's house. And some weekends we go to campouts and go hard. I've done lines off a lot of asses and tea, but all the folks close to us put functionality first. It's no fun trying to maintain a friendship with someone who's always fricked up. We've known a few of these folks. 2. I'm 33 now, and unless it's a special occasion, I like to be in bed by midnight and up at 8 the next morning. Sometimes it's nice to erase reality for a day, but it's a lovely feeling. 2. Knowing that sobriety will come back and I'll be able to go do little life things that have nothing to do with partying again. I think overall an exploratory phase is good for people as young adults. Unfortunately, it seems to start very young for a lot of folks, and you may not realize you've gone over the edge until you're in free fall. From 15-22 I went out pretty much every Friday. I stopped because I grew up and don't think getting s-faced every weekend is fun anymore. Plus the hangovers got way worse than when I was a teenager. Yes, I'll never ever stop or grow old for that matter. All my friends have girlfriends now and are getting sedentary. Not me though, hahaha, the old fricks. Go to be a loser to want to stay in on a Friday night. I'm so lonely. After I got divorced in my mid-early 30s, I was already in good shape and relatively young looking, so I fit right into bars and clubs with my identical twin brother. Lots of blow, lots of sex, lots of random crazy crap, like two people simultaneously doing lines off a girl's butt or pee. Once ended up at a crazy orgy sex party. I didn't participate, I was a little too weirded out to be turned on. Like, were they wearing condoms? I didn't see any laying around, but I saw plenty of people getting railed. Raving and going to techno clubs a lot, taking lots of drugs, even selling some to life friends. Then I just got sick of the drugs for different reasons. At my last rave I was with my two best friends. We took MDMA, speed and LSD. The night was just too crazy for me. I've never seen my friends so much destroyed. One of them couldn't even speak properly because of the high dose of MDMA. Then we decided to take LSD. We split the dose in 3 to get a light trip. But the dosage was way too much and it started to kick very late. Imagine all of us bad tripping at 16 PM in the car without food or water. We just forgot like newbies. Police was waiting outside the forest. The worst part is that we blocked everyone with our car. I was driving. That was badly parked. 20 people had to move it by carrying it to the side of the dirt road in the night so they could go back home. Everyone hated us. Especially me since I was driving. Some would have beaten my butt if I wasn't bad tripping that much on LSD. When we finally got home we all agreed that it would be our last party of this kind and that we went way too far. We are intelligent people and we really fricked this night. It is still difficult to remember it. I had nightmare for weeks. I will always remember my bad trip and how sick and paranoid I was. Awful. Then we decided to take LSD. Imagine all of us bad tripping at 16 PM. Story checks out. I did for a summer. You can get addicted to coke really quick, guys. Ended with me broke, homeless, and stabbed a guy in a trailer park. Please elaborate. I started going out for a few beers when I was 15. But nothing crazy. 16 is drinking age in my country. I only started clubbing a lot when I was in my mid-20s. I actually stopped drinking at 18 and never did any drugs. But I went clubbing 5-6 nights a week. Didn't stay out as long as some of the others, but hooked up quite a bit. Got into most places in town for free, cause I knew DJs, doormen, club managers, owners, etc. Completely stopped when I went abroad for work at 29. Didn't really get back into it when I returned. I did go out occasionally and bumped into a lot of the people I knew from before. Some places I could just go to on my own and know I'd run into some familiar faces to hang out with. It's just weird how I moved on, have a career, etc. And some of those people are still right where I left off. Still doing drugs, still don't have proper jobs, late 30s and done nothing. Now, 40, I hardly go out at all. Partly because I moved abroad again about 5 years ago. Actually, in the last country I lived I did go out a few times a month, and I do drink now, but very moderately. Throwaway. I partied from 16 to nearly 30. It started with a lot of drinking. Then I started smoking weed multiple times a day, every day, and would drink myself to sleep. I made it work by doing restaurant jobs and dealing. It was pretty easy, to be honest. I had a little studio apartment in a crappy part of town, a few friends and lots of girls. Girls love to party. In my 20s I started doing a lot of coke too, mainly to keep me from getting too drunk. Always looking for the next thing, I started freebasing and occasionally buying crack off the street. For the most part dealing kept me in money and drugs though. I only really struggled when the supply lines were disrupted. Somehow I never got arrested. I'm not sure how. It all came crashing down when my best friend had a mental break. The alcohol and drugs just kind of broke his mind. He ended up punching through a glass door trying to break into his ex's house. I found him in the bushes outside my building, covered in blood and crap, crying like a baby. I cleaned him up and called his parents, who I hardly knew, and they trucked him off into rehab. He ended up in and out of prison, on and off the streets, until he died from an OD. I continued to party with our friends but no one seemed to care what happened. It was just part of the life. People drop out. I thought about all the people in the room, most of whom I'd only know for a few months. I had no old friends anymore. The crew I started with were dead, jailed or in diversion, and a few got religion. Everyone in the room was much younger than me too. I was the old man of the scene at 28, so I quit. I just quit everything. Got a job waiting tables in a fancy restaurant to pay bills, and went back to college. Nothing makes you feel old like starting college in your late 20s. It wasn't that hard either, physically. No huge withdrawals and only minor cravings. The hard part was the loneliness. All of my relationships had centered around drugs and alcohol. I had no family willing to speak to me. I was completely alone and not sure how to make friends. I had never trusted anyone in my life, really. So even casual friendships were hard, and still are. I think everyone has an angle, a dark side they aren't showing. Everyone wants something. It's been nearly 10 years drug free. I still drink, but nothing like I used to, and life is okay. I have a good enough job, a 1-bedroom in a nicer area. Things are fine, and I'm good with that. I'm good with being fine. I miss my best friend though. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.